Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the U-East horizon, watching the stars drift past the main viewport. The exploration vessel had been his home for 3 years now, and he knew every sound it made as it moved through space. His crew of 200 souls trusted him to keep them safe while they mapped new worlds and searched for signs of life among the distant suns. Engineer Lisa Chun walked up beside him carrying a tablet filled with status reports. Her dark hair was pulled back in the regulation style, but Jake could see the tiredness in her eyes from working double shifts to keep their aging ship running smoothly. The horizon was 15 years old and showed its age in 100 small ways that only Lisa seemed able to fix. "All systems running normal, Captain," she said, handing him the tablet. "We should reach the Kepler 442 system in 6 hours. The colony on the second planet is expecting us for their quarterly supply drop and system check." Jake nodded as he looked over the numbers. New Geneva Colony was home to 3 million people who had left Earth 20 years ago to build a new life under an alien sun. They grew food and manufactured goods that were shipped back to Earth while raising their children in the clean air of an unspoiled world. The colony was one of humanity's success stories. "Any word from the surface?" Jake asked Tactical Officer Ryan Brooks, who sat at his station monitoring communications. Ryan was young but sharp and had earned his place through hard work rather than connections. His fingers moved across the control panel with practiced ease. "Nothing unusual, sir. Governor Martinez sent the standard greeting yesterday and confirmed they have our supplies ready for pickup. Colonial Defense reports all quiet in their sector." Ryan replied without looking up from his screens. Communications Specialist Amy Davis turned in her chair to face the captain. She had been with the Horizon since its first mission and knew more about deep space communication than anyone else in the fleet. Her station was always perfectly organized, and she took pride in maintaining contact with human space, even at the edge of known territory. "Captain, I'm picking up some strange readings on the long-range sensors," Amy said with a frown. "It looks like multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace about 2 million kilometers from the colony world. The signatures don't match any known human vessels." Jake felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. First contact with alien life was something every explorer dreamed about, but also feared. Humanity had spread to 12 star systems without meeting another intelligent species, and many people believed they were alone in the galaxy. Others warned that any aliens they encountered might not be friendly. "Put it on the main screen," ordered as he moved to his command chair. The viewport changed to show sensor data painted in false colors against the star field. Dozens of red contacts appeared near Kepler 442b, moving in formation toward the planet. The ships were large and moved with purpose that suggested military organization. Lisa Chun studied the readings over Amy's shoulder. "Those vessels are using technology I don't recognize. Their power signatures are off the charts, and they're maintaining formation like a battle fleet. Captain, we need to get word back to Earth immediately." "Already on it," Amy said as her fingers flew over her console. "Sending priority burst transmission to Centauri Station. They should relay it to Earth Command within the hour." On the screen, the alien ships reached orbit around New Geneva and took positions that suggested they were preparing for some kind of operation. Jake hoped it was peaceful contact, but his military training told him otherwise. The formation was clearly hostile and designed to control orbital space around the colony. "Captain," Ryan called out with alarm in his voice, "I'm reading massive energy buildups on those alien vessels. Whatever they're planning, it's going to be big." Before Jake could respond, the screen erupted in light as dozens of energy beams lanced down from orbit. The colony's defensive shields flared and died within seconds under the overwhelming assault. The planet's surface began to glow as cities, and farms were vaporized by weapons that turned matter into pure energy. "My God," Lisa whispered as they watched 3 million human beings die in minutes. The alien ships fired without warning or negotiation, destroying everything that humanity had built on that distant world. Women and children who had never hurt anyone were murdered by creatures. They had never met. Jake gripped his command chair until his knuckles turned white. Amy, get me a channel to those ships. We need to try to communicate with them. I'm trying, sir, but they're not responding to any standard frequencies. Either they can't hear us, or they don't want to talk. Amy replied with frustration. The alien vessels finished their work of destruction and began moving away from the dead world. Jake realized with horror that the horizon was directly in their path and would be detected within minutes. His exploration ship had light defensive systems, but nothing that could stand against the firepower that had just destroyed an entire colony. Lisa, I need everything you can give me from the engines. Ryan, prepare for evasive maneuvers. Amy, keep trying to get that message to Earth. Jake ordered as red warning lights began flashing throughout the ship. The first alien vessel to spot them was sleek and organic looking, like it had been grown rather than built. Its hull seemed to shift and flow as it moved through space, propelled by forces that human science couldn't explain. Jake counted weapon ports along its length that could reduce the horizon to atoms in seconds. They're scanning us, Captain, Ryan reported as his tactical displays lit up with threat warnings. Multiple target locks acquired. They're definitely not friendly. A beam of coherent energy passed close enough to the horizon to overload several power grids. Lisa cursed as she worked to reroute power around the damaged systems, while sparks flew from overloaded circuits throughout the ship. The aliens were playing with them like a cat with a mouse. Message away, Captain, Amy called out as her console exploded in a shower of sparks that left her face bleeding. Quantum burst got through before they could jam us. Earth will know what happened here. Jake felt the ship shudder as more alien weapons found their range. Hull plating began to buckle under the assault, and he knew they had minutes before the horizon was destroyed. His crew looked to him for orders, but there was nothing he could do against such overwhelming force. All hands prepare for emergency jump, he announced over the ship's communication system. We're getting out of here. The horizon's hyperspace. Engines screamed as they were pushed beyond safe limits. Space twisted around the ship as it clawed its way into the higher dimensions that allowed faster than light travel. Behind them, the alien fleet continued its deadly work, confident that no human would survive to carry word of their attack. As the ship fell through hyperspace toward the nearest human outpost, Jake stared at the tactical display showing the location where New Geneva had been. 3 million innocent people had died without warning or reason. Someone would pay for this massacre, and Jake Morrison swore that humanity would not forget what had been done to them among the distant stars. Admiral Kate Sullivan was deep in the Pentagon's most secure levels when the quantum burst transmission arrived from the horizon. She had been reviewing supply reports for the outer colonies when her aide, Lieutenant Colonel Jim Parker, burst through the reinforced doors with a look of panic on his face. The message from Captain Morrison changed everything in an instant. "Ma'am, you need to see this immediately," Jim said as he activated the holographic display in the center of the war room. The image of New Geneva colony appeared in 3 dimensions, showing the planet as it had been just hours before. Green continents covered with human cities and farms rotated slowly under alien suns that had welcomed humanity with warmth and light. Kate read Morrison's report twice before the full horror sank in. 3 million civilians dead without warning or provocation. An entire world sterilized by creatures that humanity had never encountered before. The aliens had shown no interest in communication or negotiation, and had destroyed everything human in their path with weapons that defied understanding. Get me Defense Secretary Carter and Joint Chiefs. Chairman Peterson immediately. Kate ordered as she moved to the secure communication terminal. "Tell them we have a priority alpha situation and invoke Protocol Dragon Fire." Jim's face went pale. At the mention of Dragon Fire, only a handful of people in the entire government knew what those words meant, and most of them had hoped never to hear them spoken aloud. The protocol had been created 20 years ago by a man whose name was known only to a select few and whose work had been buried in the deepest levels of military secrecy. Defense Secretary Paul Carter arrived within minutes, followed by Admiral Sam Peterson, who commanded all human naval forces. Both men had the same grim expression as they took their seats around the holographic display that now showed the tactical situation in the Kepler 442 system. The alien fleet had vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind only radiation and debris, where a thriving human world had existed. "Gentlemen, we are now at war with an unknown alien species," Kate announced as she activated the Dragon Fire protocols. Deep beneath the Pentagon, computers that had been dormant for decades began to wake up and send coded signals to locations scattered throughout human space. "It's time to unveil our dragons." The Dragon Fleet had been humanity's most closely guarded secret for 20 years. Hidden in asteroid belts and dark matter clouds across 12 star systems, the massive vessels had been under construction since the first human colonies were established. Each ship was 3 kilometers long and built using technology that most of humanity's scientists believed was impossible. Dr. Leon Hayes had been the genius behind the Dragon Fleet before his mysterious disappearance 2 decades earlier. His theories about manipulating space-time and harnessing exotic matter had been dismissed by the scientific community as fantasy, until he proved them correct in a series of classified experiments that changed everything. The government had immediately classified his work and begun construction of the most powerful weapons in human history. Commander Alex Rodriguez received the activation signal while standing in the command center of UES Bahamut, hidden deep within the asteroid belt of the Sol system. He had been presumed dead after a classified mission to test the Dragon Fleet's capabilities, but had actually been preparing for this moment for 5 years. His body bore the scars of genetic and cybernetic enhancement that allowed him to interface directly with his ship's reality warping systems. "All Dragon vessels report ready status," Alex announced over the fleet's quantum communication network. 11 other commanders responded from their hidden positions throughout human space. Captain Beth Johnson commanded U-East Leviathan from the Centauri system, while Captain Danny Foster led U-East Behemoth from its hiding place near Wolf 359. Each ship was crewed by volunteers who had undergone the same painful enhancements that allowed them to operate technology beyond normal human understanding. Dr. Maya Patel had been Hayes' protege before his disappearance, and now served as the Dragon Fleet's chief scientist. She stood in the Pentagon's Dragon Command Center, explaining the fleet's capabilities to the assembled military leadership while technicians monitored the awakening vessels across human space. The ships were powered by exotic matter reactors that could manipulate the fundamental forces of reality itself. The Dragon Fleet utilizes technology reverse-engineered from a derelict alien vessel discovered in the Oort cloud 50 years ago, Maya explained as holographic displays showed the sleek predatory shapes of humanity's secret weapons. The original ship belonged to a species we call the Architects, who apparently designed their technology specifically to counter aggressive alien races like the ones that attacked New Geneva. Admiral Peterson studied the tactical displays showing 12 dragons stirring to life across human space. Each vessel is a masterpiece of engineering that combined human ingenuity with alien science to create something that had never existed before in the galaxy. The ships existed partially outside normal spacetime, which made them nearly impossible to detect or target using conventional methods. "How long before they're ready for combat operations?" Paul Carter asked, as reports flooded in from the outer. Colonies about panic and civil unrest following news of New Geneva's destruction. Earth's population was demanding immediate retaliation, while colony governors called for increased defensive measures that the regular fleet could not provide. "The dragons are already combat ready, sir," Alex Rodriguez reported from the Bahamut's bridge, where his crew was running final system checks on weapons that could tear holes in reality itself. "We've been maintaining full operational status for 5 years, waiting for this day. My ships can be at the target coordinates within 12 hours. President Helen Clark addressed the nation from the Oval Office that evening as riots broke out in major cities across Earth and the colonies. Her words were carefully chosen to avoid revealing the existence of the Dragon Fleet, while promising swift justice for the murdered colonists. She spoke of humanity's resolve and determination to protect its people from alien aggression, without mentioning the terrible weapons that were already moving through the darkness between stars. The Zephyrian collective celebrated their easy victory over the primitive humans, while Commander Vextar received praise from the High Council for his swift elimination of the vermin that had dared to settle in sacred space. Their arrogance blinded them to the storm that was gathering in the depths of human territory, where ancient secrets were awakening to reign. Destruction upon those foolish enough to spill human blood as the Dragon Fleet moved toward its first target. Admiral Sullivan stood in the Pentagon's war room, watching status displays that showed humanity's most powerful weapons closing in on their unsuspecting prey. The aliens had made a fatal mistake in underestimating the species they had chosen to attack, and would soon learn the price of shedding innocent human blood among the distant stars. Commander Vextar stood before the Zephyrian High Council, receiving praise for his swift victory over the human vermin. The great hall echoed with the sounds of approval as council members celebrated the easy destruction of New Geneva Colony. Their warrior culture valued strength above all else, and the humans had proven to be as weak as expected when faced with superior Zephyrian technology. The primitive mammals offered no resistance. Vextar reported with satisfaction as holographic. Displays showed the burning remains of human settlements. Their weapons were laughably weak, and their defenses collapsed within minutes. The galaxy will be cleaner with these creatures removed from existence. High Executor Mordun nodded approvingly from his throne, carved from the bones of a massive space creature his ancestors had hunted to extinction. The Zephyrians had conquered dozens of species in their rise to power, and humans would simply be another entry in their catalog of victories. Their organic ships were grown rather than built and powered by the life force of conquered worlds making them nearly unstoppable in battle. Begin planning the systematic extermination of all human colonies, Mordan commanded as his advisors brought up star charts showing the locations of human settlements. These vermin have spread like a disease across 12 systems and must be cleansed before they can contaminate more sacred space with their presence. War leader Keshin studied the tactical displays with the cold efficiency that had made him the most feared commander in the collective. His scarred face bore the marks of 100 battles against species that had dared to resist Zephyrian expansion. The humans would learn the same lesson as all the others who had stood against the will of the High Council. Meanwhile, in the Proxima, Centauri System Fleet Commander Alex Rodriguez prepared to unleash humanity's dragons for the first time in actual combat. The UES Bahamut and 3 sister ships hung in folded space near a Zephyrian supply depot that intelligence had identified as a key logistics hub. The facility processed raw materials from conquered worlds and shipped them back to Zephyrian space to fuel their war machine. All dragons report ready for combat operations, Alex announced over the quantum communication network as his enhanced nervous system interfaced directly with the ship's reality warping systems. The cybernetic implants in his brain allowed him to think at superhuman speeds, while genetic modifications let his body withstand the stresses of manipulating space-time itself. Captain Beth Johnson commanded U.E.'s Leviathan from her position in a fleet formation. Her ship's exotic matter reactors hummed with barely contained power as she prepared to test weapons that existed partially outside normal reality. The Dragon ships could phase in and out of conventional spacetime, making them nearly impossible to detect until they chose to attack. The Zephyrian supply depot consisted of massive, organic structures that had been grown around several asteroids to create a complex web of processing facilities and storage areas. Thousands of slave workers from conquered species labored in the facility under the watchful eyes of Zephyrian overseers who treated them as disposable resources. "Commence attack," Alex ordered as the 4 Dragon ships dropped out of folded space. Like nightmares made real, their hulls crackled with exotic energy that bent light around them, creating visual distortions that hurt to look at directly. The Bahamut's primary weapon systems came online as spacetime began to warp around the massive vessel. The Zephyrian defenders had only seconds to react before Beth Johnson fired the Leviathan spatial distortion cannon. The weapon tore a hole in reality itself, creating a miniature black hole that consumed everything within a 50-kilometer radius. The supply depot's main processing facility simply ceased to exist as matter was compressed beyond the point where atomic bonds could hold. Commander Tekval led the facility's defense fleet of 30 vessels, but found himself facing an enemy that defied every law of physics he understood. The human ships phased in and out of normal space like ghosts, while their weapons reached across dimensions to strike targets that should have been safely protected behind energy shields. "How are they doing this?" Tekval screamed into his communicator, as another Dragon ship fired a weapon that aged his escort vessels into scrap metal in seconds. The temporal distortion field moved through his formation like a wave of entropy, turning advanced warships into debris that crumbled at the slightest touch. The U.E.S. Behemoth, commanded by Captain Danny Foster, materialized directly inside the depot's defensive perimeter and began systematically destroying every structure with weapons that operated outside conventional physics. Foster's ship could exist in multiple dimensions, simultaneously making it nearly impossible for the Zephyrian gunners to acquire target locks. Within minutes, the entire supply depot was reduced to expanding clouds of superheated gas and twisted metal. The Dragon ships had demonstrated firepower that exceeded anything the Zephyrians had encountered in centuries of conquest. Their energy shields that had protected them against every known weapon type collapsed like tissue paper before humanity's reality warping arsenal. "Send immediate distress signal to the High Council," Tekval ordered as his flagship's hull began to buckle under weapons fire that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "Tell them the humans possess technology that should not exist. They are not the primitive species we believe them to be." The transmission cut to static as the Leviathan's main batteries reduced Tekval's ship to its component atoms. The Zephyrian commander's final message reached the High Council as nothing more than screams and electromagnetic noise that told them nothing useful about the nature of the threat they now faced. Alex Rodriguez watched the destruction with grim satisfaction as his enhanced senses processed tactical data at superhuman speeds. The Dragon ships had performed flawlessly in their first combat test, but this was only the beginning of humanity's response to the new Geneva massacre. The aliens would learn that attacking innocent humans carried a price beyond their ability to pay. "Mission accomplished," Beth Johnson reported as her ship's sensors confirmed the complete destruction of the Zephyrian facility. No enemy survivors detected. All Dragon vessels reporting minimal damage and full operational capability. News of the impossible defeat reached the Zephyrian High Council within hours, causing panic among leaders who had never faced an enemy capable of matching their technology. War leader Kesh refused to believe the initial reports convinced that humans lacked the scientific knowledge to create such advanced weapons. Systems. Impossible. Keshen snarled as he studied the garbled transmissions from the destroyed supply depot. These primitive mammals cannot possess technology superior to our own. TechVal must have encountered some kind of trick or deception that made human weapons appear more powerful than they actually are. High Executor Mordoom was less certain as he reviewed the tactical data with growing unease. The destruction of the supply depot had been total and achieved with a speed that suggested overwhelming technological superiority. Perhaps the humans were not as primitive as the collective had assumed when they ordered their extermination. Dispatch a battle fleet to investigate, Mordan commanded despite his growing doubts. 50 vessels should be sufficient to crush whatever trickery the humans are using. If they truly possess advanced weapons, we must learn their secrets before proceeding with the cleansing operation. The Zephyrian battle fleet of 50 vessels dropped out of hyperspace near Wolf 359 with war leader Keshen commanding from his flagship. He had brought the most powerful ships in the collective's arsenal, including 3 dreadnoughts that had never been defeated in battle. The organic hulls of his vessels pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that showed their readiness for combat against whatever trickery the humans might attempt. Spread formation and begin active scanning, Keshen ordered as his fleet moved deeper into the system where intelligence suggested the humans had established some kind of military installation. His sensors showed only empty space and scattered asteroids, but he knew the mammals were hiding somewhere, waiting to spring their trap. Danny Foster watched the approaching alien fleet from the bridge of East Leviathan as his ship hung in folded space invisible to conventional detection methods. The Dragon vessel existed partially outside normal reality, which allowed it to observe enemies while remaining completely undetected. Foster's cybernetic enhancements let him process tactical data faster than any unmodified human could manage. 50 contacts confirmed, Foster reported to Fleet Command as his enhanced vision studied the alien formations. They're using search patterns that suggest they expect to find a conventional base or fleet concentration. They have no idea what they're actually facing. The Zephyrian ships spread across the system in a hunting formation designed to flush out hidden enemies and destroy them with overwhelming firepower. Keshen had used similar tactics against dozens of species over his long career and expected the humans to react predictably when faced with superior numbers and technology. Saran detecting strange energy readings from the outer system, reported Navigator Yexdal from his position at the sensor station. The signatures are unlike anything in our databases, and they seem to be moving in impossible patterns through space. Keshen studied the readings with growing confusion as his instruments showed contacts that appeared and disappeared without following any known laws of physics. The energy signatures moved through solid asteroids as if they were empty space and generated gravitational fields that bend starlight in ways that should have been impossible. Foster activated the Leviathan's reality engines and began his approach to the alien fleet. The Dragon ship could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, which made it nearly invulnerable to conventional weapons while allowing it to strike from angles that normal physics said should not exist. His enhanced nervous system interfaced directly with the ship's systems, giving him superhuman reaction speed. The first indication the Zephyrians had of danger was when 3 of their escort vessels simply vanished from existence. One moment they were maintaining formation, and the next they had been erased from reality without any visible weapon being fired. Keshen's sensors showed no trace of the missing ships, as if they had never existed at all. What happened to our escorts? Keshen demanded as panic began to spread through his fleet. His tactical officers had no explanation for how 3 warships could disappear without leaving debris or energy signatures. The humans seemed to possess weapons that operated outside the known laws of the universe. Foster smiled grimly as the Leviathan's temporal distortion cannon recharged for another shot. The weapon created localized time fields that aged enemy vessels into scrap metal in seconds. By acceleration, the natural decay processes that normally took centuries. Metal became brittle and electronics failed as time itself became a weapon. In human hands, another group of Zephyrian ships began showing signs of rapid aging as their hulls developed stress fractures and their organic components started to wither. The alien crews watched in horror as their vessels crumbled around them while they tried desperately to identify the source of the attack that was killing them. All ships concentrate fire on Grid 77 Alpha, Keshen ordered as his gunners. Tried to target the area where the attacks seemed to be originating. Hundreds of energy beams lanced through empty space without hitting anything solid, while the invisible enemy continued to destroy his fleet, one ship at a time. The Leviathan phased back into normal space directly above the Zephyrian flagship, with its main batteries already charging. Foster's ship had materialized inside the enemy formation, where their heavy weapons could not be brought to bear without risking friendly fire. A dragon vessel's exotic hull crackled with energy that made it appear to flicker in and out of existence. Target the command ship, Foster ordered as his weapons officer prepared to fire the ship's most devastating weapon. The spatial compression cannon could collapse matter into a singularity, creating a miniature black hole that would consume everything within its event horizon. The Zephyrian flagship was about to learn why humanity called these vessels dragons. Keshen had only seconds to comprehend what he was seeing before the human weapon fired. The compression beam struck his flagship's hull and began collapsing the molecular structure of the ship itself. Metal and organic materials were crushed beyond the atomic level as gravitational forces that normally existed only at the hearts of stars were focused into a weapon of unimaginable destruction. The Zephyrian dreadnought imploded with a flash of exotic radiation that temporarily opened a window into dimensions that normal matter could not survive. Keshen's final transmission was nothing more than static mixed with the screams of crew members who were being compressed along with their ship into a point of infinite density. The remaining Zephyrian vessels tried to retreat, but found their hyperspace drives jammed by fields that prevented faster than light travel. Foster's ship had deployed reality anchors that locked the local area of space into normal dimensions, making escape impossible. The aliens were trapped with a predator that could strike from outside their understanding of physics, one by one. The surviving ships were destroyed by weapons that defied explanation. Some were aged into dust by temporal fields, while others simply ceased to exist as spatial distortion cannons tore holes in the fabric of reality itself. The Zephyrian fleet that had arrived with such confidence was systematically annihilated. By a single human vessel. Dr. Maya Patel monitored the battle from the Pentagon's Dragon command center as real-time data flowed in from Foster's ship. The architect technology was performing even better than her calculations had predicted, and the Dragon vessels were proving to be everything that humanity had hoped when the secret project began 20 years earlier. Complete destruction of enemy. Fleet confirmed, Foster reported as his sensors showed only expanding clouds of debris where 50 Zephyrian warships had been. No survivors detected. All alien vessels destroyed with minimal expenditure of exotic matter reserves. Admiral Kate Sullivan felt a cold satisfaction as she studied the tactical display showing the battle's outcome. The aliens had attacked innocent human colonists without provocation, and now they were learning the price of their aggression. The Dragon fleet had demonstrated that humanity possessed weapons that could destroy any enemy foolish enough to threaten them. News of the second impossible defeat reached the Zephyrian High Council within hours, causing panic among leaders who finally began to understand the true nature of their enemy. The humans were not primitive mammals, but a species that had somehow developed technology that operated outside the known laws of physics. The war that had begun with such confidence was becoming a nightmare that threatened the very survival of the collective. High Executor Dunn sat on his bone throne staring at the reports from Wolf 359 with growing terror. 50 of his finest warships had been destroyed by a single human vessel, using weapons that should not have been possible to create. The mammals that his people had dismissed as primitive, vermin possessed technology that made the collective's greatest achievements look like children's toys. "How many ships do we have left?" Mordan asked his military advisors as panic spread. Through the halls of the High Council, reports were coming in from across Zephyrian space, telling of human attacks that defied explanation. Entire fleets were being destroyed by enemies that could strike from outside normal reality. "We have called back all available vessels from our conquered territories," War Coordinator Nextha reported with barely controlled fear in her voice. 800 ships are converging on our home system, along with allied fleets from 12 subject species. It is the largest armada ever assembled in our history. Mordan nodded grimly as he studied the tactical displays showing his massive fleet gathering around the Zephyrian homeworld. If the humans wanted to finish what they had started, they would have to face the combined might of an entire galactic empire. Surely no species could stand against such overwhelming numbers, even with their impossible weapons. Fleet Commander Alex Rodriguez stood on the bridge of UES Bahamut as the entire Dragon fleet materialized around Earth's moon. All 12 vessels had returned from their terror campaign across Zephyrian space, leaving behind a trail of destroyed facilities and shattered fleets. The aliens finally understood that they faced an enemy beyond their ability to comprehend or defeat. "All Dragons report ready for final assault," Alex announced as his enhanced senses processed tactical data from across human space. The cybernetic implants in his brain allowed him to coordinate with his fellow commanders at the speed of thought, while his genetic modifications let him withstand the stresses of commanding reality-warping weapons. President Helen Clark stood in the Pentagons, war room watching as the Dragon fleet prepared for humanity's ultimate response to the New Geneva massacre. The aliens had murdered 3 million innocent people, and now they would learn that attacking humanity carried consequences beyond their worst nightmares. The Dragons were ready to show the galaxy what happened to those who spilled human blood. Captain Beth Johnson prepared her ship's most devastating weapons as the Leviathan's exotic matter reactors reached full power. The Dragon vessels had been designed specifically to fight enemies like the Zephyrians, using technology that operated outside conventional physics. After 20 years of preparation, humanity was finally ready to unleash its full wrath. The combined Zephyrian armada dropped out of hyperspace near Earth, expecting to find a primitive world defended by inferior technology. Instead, they found 12 vessels that radiated energy signatures unlike anything in their databases. The Dragon ships hung in formation around Luna, like predators waiting to strike at prey that had foolishly entered their domain. 800 enemy contacts confirmed, reported Captain Danny Foster, as his ship's sensors analyzed the approaching alien fleet. Multiple species represented, including Zephyrian allies and mercenary forces. They've brought everything they have for this final battle. Mordan stood on his flagship's command deck, staring at the human vessels with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. His scientists had analyzed the wreckage from previous battles and concluded that the Dragon ships must have some kind of weakness that could be exploited. 800 ships against 12 should provide enough firepower to overwhelm any defense. All vessels prepare for coordinated assault, Mordan ordered as his massive fleet spread into attack formation. Target the largest human ships and concentrate all firepower. Whatever technology they possess, it cannot protect them against the combined might of our entire civilization. Alex Rodriguez opened a communication channel that reached every ship in the alien fleet. His voice carried across the void with cold certainty as he delivered humanity's final judgment on those who had dared to attack innocent colonists. The time for mercy had passed, and only vengeance remained. You came to our space and murdered our people without warning or cause, Alex announced as the Dragon fleet's weapons began charging to full power. You wanted to exterminate humanity, so now face the consequences of your arrogance. Learn to know our dragons. The battle began as 800 alien ships opened fire simultaneously, sending enough energy to sterilize a planet toward the 12 Dragon vessels. The combined firepower of an entire galactic empire struck the human ships and accomplished nothing as their exotic shields deflected attacks that came from normal spacetime, while the dragons existed partially outside reality itself. Beth Johnson activated the Leviathan's reality storm generators, creating a pocket of twisted spacetime that trapped hundreds of enemy vessels in a maze of impossible physics. The alien ships found themselves flying through dimensions that their crews could not survive as gravity flowed backward and time moved in circles that led nowhere. Foster engaged his ship's temporal acceleration field, turning the space around his vessel into a zone where centuries passed in seconds. Enemy ships that entered the field aged into scrap metal before their crews could even realize what was happening to them. Weapons and armor designed to last millennia crumbled into dust as time itself became humanity's ally. Captain Nick Thompson commanded UES Behemoth as it materialized inside the enemy formation and began systematically destroying ships with weapons that operated outside the laws of physics. His spatial compression cannons created miniature black holes that consumed everything within their event. Horizon while dimensional phase beams erased targets from existence itself. The alien fleet began to disintegrate as species after species realized they faced an enemy that possessed godlike power. Mercenary crews abandoned their contracts and fled into hyperspace, while allied species withdrew their support rather than face annihilation. The great armada that had come to destroy humanity scattered like leaves before a hurricane. Morgan watched his life's work crumble around him as the dragon ships carved through his fleet with contemptuous ease. His most powerful dreadnoughts were reduced to expanding clouds of plasma, while his escort vessels simply ceased to exist. The humans were not just winning the battle, they were demonstrating absolute technological superiority. Surrender, Morgan, transmitted on all frequencies as his flagship's hull began to buckle under weapons fire that came from everywhere at once. We yield to human authority and beg for mercy. Our attack on your colony was a mistake that we deeply regret. The transmission reached President Clark in the Pentagon, where she stood surrounded by military leaders, watching humanity's ultimate victory unfold. The aliens who had murdered 3 million innocent people were now begging for the mercy they had refused to show to defenseless colonists on New Geneva. No mercy, Clark announced as she gave the final order that would reshape the balance of power in the galaxy. Finish them. The Dragon fleet unleashed its full destructive potential as reality itself became a weapon in human hands. The surviving alien ships were consumed by forces that existed beyond normal physics, while their crews experienced the same terror that human colonists had felt in their final moments. The massacre at New Geneva was avenged in the most complete way possible. Within hours, news of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy as surviving aliens carried word of the dragon ships to every corner of known space. Civilizations that had never heard of Earth began sending desperate diplomatic missions, offering tribute and alliance to the species that had demonstrated godlike power. The age of human dominance had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same.